Good evening, November Foxtrot, and I've been practicing this. Hey, velkommen till November Foxtrot, which I believe, unless Jonathan has done me wrong, and is Swedish. Hi, welcome to November Foxtrot.
Please say you've got to say something stupid.
Good enough.
Just quickly, Mike. I don't like being in this position.
Oh, do you want to be up there?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, there you go.
That's my normal spot.
Oh, goodness sake. Good evening, welcome to the show. We're joined live by our studio audience at the moment of Pegasus, Call Sign Samurai, and James. There's a couple other people as well hiding away in the background. Please feel free to get involved with the chat. If you have any questions, then pop a little cue at the beginning, and it just helps us to find those as we know about, go through on the episode. But we're joined tonight by Jonathan and Cameron from Nordic MilSim, who are a MilSim organisation company based in Sweden. So, guys, do you want to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit more about you?
Yeah, I guess I can start off. First of all, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it. I think we're gonna have a good time. I'm Jonathan. I'm 35 years old. I've been playing Airsoft for like the past 10 years or something like that, mostly focusing on MilSims. I think I went on my first MilSim my first 6 months getting into Airsoft or something like that, and that's been my thing ever since. Besides Nordic MilSim, because you don't get rich by organizing Airsoft events, I'm a teacher at a high school here in Sweden. I teach history and geography. I have 2 kids, a dog and a wife. Love American football. And yeah, that's basically it, I think.
Nice.
Hey, thank you for having me as well. My name is Cameron. I am 31 years old. I've been playing Airsoft for a little bit more than a decade. I didn't really get into MilSim until 2020, and I've been working with Nordic MilSim for about a year now. And I am an American immigrant living in Sweden, moved to Sweden from California, and my current occupation is looking for a job, aka unemployed. I'm not milking the system, I promise. Yeah.
No, cool. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put a little cue at the beginning. And we'll be sort of chatting all things, I guess Nordic and MilSim throughout the episode. So Andy, did you want to just mention where Lance is?
Well, I don't really know where Lance is, to be honest. Something to do with picking children up or something.
Yeah,
he might join us later on. He might just be a bit late. But yeah, there is another one of us, which you guys haven't met yet. But hopefully he'll be here soon, or is at least listening. If he is listening, hurry the fuck up.
Yeah. A little bit of news this week. We have obviously now a week into releasing our How Sim is Your MilSim calculator on the website. There seems to be generally positive reviews. It turns out that when we posted it into the US MilSim Facebook group, we weren't aware that there was a bit of ongoing beef in there about event organisers comparing themselves to other event organisers, which when we then launched in heavy footage
No. I don't want to say right. There's no we in this. It's you.
Okay, I did it.
Storming for.
I did it.
Punish me with this brush as well.
Sorry, I jumped in heavy footed and just posted straight away. This is a way of calculating how good your MilSim is. Well, no, sorry, that's not true. It's how sim your MilSim is. It's not a comparison of events. And then we immediately split the room. It was almost as divisive as the recent US elections in terms of, you know, some people loved it, some people really hated us. So hopefully that has gone down better than we hoped. So, but in other news as well, we've also updated our kit list. It is now a slightly different format to make it more usable. Because there's a couple bits of feedback on that. Yes, there's a lot less torches on there.
A lot less torches.
So yeah, if you're interested in that, then head over to the website and you can download some information there. Cool. Andy, is there any news that you've got this week?
No.
No?
I woke up this morning. I woke up late. That was about it.
Well Right, Nordic MilSim. So, who are Nordic MilSim? What do you guys do? Sum it up for us.
Do you want to go ahead and do that, Cameron?
Sure. So we do a mixture of what they call in Sweden general Sunday play, which is more for hosting games that are open to the general public. But that is more of our in between. We like to say that our flagship product is our multi-day series that we call our MilSim series. Which is in its true form a 40-hour event that is continuous with no breaks, safe zones, or stop in play. It is based on real world factions. So we have NATO and Rus 4 and a lot of other uniform and equipment restrictions in order to make the event more sim. This is something that we have been working on since August of 2024. So we are still refining that product. However, this most recent event that we hosted in April had yielded some pretty solid results, I would say. So it is full steam ahead with that product. And just currently looking into venues and dates for us to host the next one.
Yeah, and if I can add a little bit to it, like those 1 day, like Cameron says, shitball events, is like how they worked out in the beginning was, so I've been in the company for the past 6 years since we founded it. Cameron has been an addition to the company and is now a co-owner of the company since the past year and a half. But I always found that the MilSims I attended here in Sweden were a bit under my expectations as far as what I think a MilSim should include or should be about. And I'm going to go back to that thought, but I started out by creating 1 day events to prepare people that normally didn't go to MilSims to find the courage to purchase a ticket for a multi-day event, like to kind of close the bridge between like 1 day events into larger multi-day events, because I found that a lot of people were somewhat scared of the multi-day events because they thought they weren't prepared enough, that it would be a big gap between like a 1 day event to the other ones. So I wanted to create an event as kind of like a preparation for the larger events, where we did, like, we used to call it the mini MilSim. So the event was formatted to like the normal MilSims here in Sweden, but with condensed time span for it, and with no sleepover and whatnot. And that's like how it began. But I always had a dream to create the MilSim that I wanted to play myself. But I never had like my own personal courage to do that, because I was planning a lot in my head. I was thinking things through, and I never reached my initial or dream goal into doing so. And then came Cameron, and everything like worked out. He had all the answers to all the questions I had, and then we just tried it out. And we've had 100% player increase for each event.
Nice.
So it's turning out to be a good thing. And like for these past events we had, the past 3 events, we've had people, I think like 22 nationalities or something like that to those events. So we are thinking it's just in the beginning till it kicks off for big. So we're super excited, and just as Cameron said, it's just full steam ahead.
Nice. What sort of areas do you kind of try to get hold of for your events? Like, do you try and keep it urban, woodland, or like obviously I don't know how much expanse you've got to play with over there.
Yeah. So I would say it depends. First of all, it's all about like what's available to us. And we also have the thought we don't want to return to one venue after we've been there. We're going to have a pause for a little bit because we think it's a big thing to the overall event experience that you don't know each and every corner, each and every fox wall where you can take cover and whatnot. And players coming into the venue with a pre-planned strategy of what works and what doesn't work. Like we want to have that thing going on into our events. So we want to have a pause between each venue before we return to it. With that said, it kind of depends on, so we have two different game modes or event organization. One of them we haven't tried already or yet, which is the insurgency event. We can elaborate on that further later on, but the events we've been running so far are force on force events, so Rustford versus NATO. And we want to have that urban mixture into it, but it's not anything that we think is crucial or anything. But the past three events, all of them has had an urban setting included into the venue. It's been like half woodland or more than half woodland, and then like a small town structure with actual buildings into it, not like those airsoft plywood buildings, but like real buildings for sure. So, and we're looking into now. We're talking to different venue owners. I don't want to say too much, but we are working on getting a super fucking cool venue here in Sweden that is being used right now, but not by any other MilSim organizer. But that would be super cool. So we're looking into that. But other than that, like, so the format we have doesn't need an urban setting, whilst we think it's a good thing to have. So.
So with your events, and from my understanding, there's like a continuous narrative between all of your kind of MilSim storylines. Like, how does that play out for you?
I think it's mostly just for, I would say more for fluff / world building, like continuing the scenario. Like our most recent event we just did was pretty close to Gothenburg in Sweden, and the setting was kind of I think it's the northwesternmost province in Russia called Murmansk, and it's quite rural. So it's just, I mean, most events that I've been to here, they don't really have a setting that is like, pretend outside of where the actual venue is. So it's more about, I think, getting people immersed, getting them into the faction that they're playing as, and then also including all that information into the information we send out to players prior to the event. So we create like operation orders and things like that to kind of show what the event is, what it's about, what the setting is, and then the objectives and tasks and things like that we mix within the event all kind of pertain to the setting. So for the most recent one, it was, on Russian soil. So the Russian forces were supposed to be defending a joint NATO task force that was attempting to set up a foothold in that province. So a lot of the Russian forces' objectives were kind of defensive based to start. But as the event develops, it's not like a attack and defend. Like the objectives are supposed to be dynamic, and there's supposed to be opportunities for both factions to gain strategic advantages or deny strategic advantages to the opposing faction. So, and then also, although we don't declare any like official winners after the event, like there's no prizes or anything handed out. for whatever team, got the most eliminations or whatever the case is. It's more, based off of what we see, who accomplished what things. And then depending on that, whatever makes the most sense, we will add that into the lore, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny. We talked about that on our last show in terms of, we're personally not fans of sort of events which are scored per se. It's more kind of down to the root of you rock up to the event, you do your taskings and stuff. So
it's not really.
And I think it creates it creates advantages by having a score, but it also creates a lot of disadvantages. And what we feel like the disadvantages is that players are more focused on winning the event instead of like enjoying it.
Yeah.
And that comes down to like hit calling, general fuss between players and whatnot. And so we are always focusing on the experience. That is something that we take into our briefs and to our pre-game meetings and everything. Like, you are here to experience something, and that's what you're paying for. So just as Cameron says, like, we are not having a defined winner or loser to anything, but we will determine it somewhat within the lore, creating the next setting for the next event, even though they aren't always like interconnected. They are connected to each other, but they are not like a sequel, for instance. It's just like the events is taking place in different parts, like one small section of a bigger, broader conflict, so to say. So like the first events were an Russian invasion of Sweden, and like the last event was like a counterattack from NATO into Russia. So even though they take place in the same setting, they are not like connected to each other as far as like who won the last game, so to speak, or whatnot.
Yeah, and it's not the I had something in my it's not like the everybody is a winner thing, like Jonathan said. It's more to take the focus off of point chasers and just to put the focus on the experience, because people are less likely to try and game the system. It's like if you're shrugging hits or something, like you're doing that for an imaginary prize at that point. And yeah, it's just to get people more enveloped with the overall scenario rather than like getting concerned about what faction they want to play on because the last game this faction won or whatever the case is.
Yeah, and just like taking the last event as an example, like NATO were doing a really, really good job against Rus4. But I feel like the Rus4 players were enjoying themselves a lot, even though I don't want to say got steamrolled, but they had it coming a lot during the entire event. So, but they enjoyed themselves the entire time. And I think if you were to like have a scoreboard onto that would probably affect their enjoyment of the event.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like what Mike said. We're not a big fan of like the point scoring side of things. We definitely go to just kind of forget about the real world for a couple of days, forget about your job. But with that, do you find that you have to? Do you set out like do you have a set winner, or are you literally reliant on how the teams react with each other? Do you find that you've got to steer them in a certain direction, or do you just completely let them do what they want to do?
I don't want to, kind of reveal too much, but it's like a good example would be
it's all going to come out now.
Yeah, a good example would be like, let's say regardless of whatever the scenario is, if Rus4 is just on their heels the entire event, getting chased to the corner, eliminated to the last person in every single engagement, we're not going to put out that, Rus4 defeated the NATO counterattack. Sometimes it's a lot more obvious than others. Mm-hmm. But when I don't know if you want to add more to it, Wesley. I'm afraid of I don't want to be like, I don't want to say something that is going to
No, but I think
shape how people are going to act for future events. You know what I mean?
I think we can be honest to it. Like it's somewhat between everything anyways. Like I think people can kind of figure it out. So like we have a cadre system, and we have staff embedded with the players. In each platoon there's a staff member embedded, and they are acting as a platoon sergeant. And their job is to give missions to the platoon leader, which is a normal player. And other than that, they are to maintain player safety, player enjoyment, and the flow of the game. All cadres are connected to each other, no matter what side they're playing on. So for the last event, I was acting as a platoon sergeant for one platoon in NATO, and Cameron was acting as a platoon sergeant for another platoon on Rustford. And we were talking to each other during the event, just to kind of feel like, oh, so how's your side? How's the flow of the game? Is your side working? How is the temperature of people? Are they enjoying themselves? Like, what do you need me to do in order to like fix something up? So some things are kind of like set up, so to speak. We will never set up things like us walking into an ambush just to have the Rustford players enjoying like kicking NATO's ass in an ambush. That is nothing that's never going to happen. But we will talk to each other as far as like, what is your, what do you need from us right now? Do you need to go on an assault? Do you need to go on a mission? Do you need us to back off? Do you need us to defend or something like that? But in regards to that, we will only give the mission to the platoon leader, which is a normal player that it's not connected to staff in any ways. And he is to make the decision out of that. Like if he wants to do something else, if he wants to, like if he gets an attack mission on an objective that I give him, and if he has a plan to do it, I will not interfere with that plan, even though I would think that plan is garbage, or I think it's I will not interfere with it. That is his decision, and like how he wants to execute it, that's all on him. So like the framework is not set up, I wouldn't say, or scripted, but we talk to each other in order to make the game flow in a good way to ensure that everybody enjoys themselves. Because like, let's face it, I've been playing Airsoft for 10 years. I'm there for the experience. I want to enjoy myself, and nobody enjoys themselves if they're just kicking the other side's ass, or if they just get kicked the other way around. So like we are just trying to mitigate that, but other than that, it's not scripted at all.
I want to just add on to that. I think like a better choice of words would be like, some things are influenced, but like we're never going to come out outright and completely dictate or predetermine the outcome of some situation. Like sure. If something is happening and like one side is getting absolutely steamrolled, we're not going to be like, hey, we have this new top secret mission. It's called stand right here and wait for Rustford to regroup. Like, I think kind of the magic that like makes these events fun is, you know, maintaining the separation between like what the player is experiencing and what is going on behind like the fourth wall. So like we're not going to, we stay involved with like the happenings of the event, but we're not coming out right and, you know, saying, oh no, this isn't allowed to happen because we thought this was going to happen instead. And we want to make sure like everything goes according to what we had in our mind. Like if it were scripted, you know, like we would like Jonathan said, like ambushes and everything would be pre-set up. You know, we're not using our players as props for the other team's enjoyment sort of thing. So it's really just like when we are communicating with each other,
It's balancing the game, isn't it?
Yeah, and not just
Yeah.
balancing. We're more keeping the like the other faction's pulse in mind. So he called me at one point when Rust was just getting their asses kicked, and was like, "Is everything good?" I'm like, "Yeah, morale is super high right now. Everybody's solid." And like sometimes that's all the conversation is, like, just to make sure that people aren't absolutely miserable or too miserable, because being miserable is kind of part of the experience. But yeah, just making sure that
definitely.
shit isn't erupting into pure chaos.
Yeah. So you mentioned obviously you've got kind of a Rust for NATO factions. I know from obviously your website you've also got kind of, I don't want to say fairly strict, but you've got a lot of guidance in terms of what you kind of seem to expect for those different factions. Kind of how strict are you on that? Because I mean, you've obviously kind of almost outlined sort of, you know, in terms of the camouflage patterns, I think we can all get on board with that in terms of needing to have roughly the same or kind of consistent camouflage. But you've also talked about like weapons and loadouts and stuff like that. So how big a part of that is for you, your event?
I would say it's a big part. I know, like, this is something that we've been talking through a lot. Like, we keep talking about it a ton of times. We just added a fourth faction into our events.
Well, I guess for Force and Force third, but we haven't even like touched into insurgency as far as like how that's going to work. But
but we and that is something that we discuss a lot. So there's a lot of things going into this. First of all, if we just talk like NATO and Rust for like restricting actual weaponry and loadouts and everything like that, it comes down to what we are, and we have made the internal decision that we are not going to change who we are. Of course, we're going to change rule sets sometimes if we think that something isn't working correctly, or if it's something that the player base really want to change or anything like that. We can make those changes. We're not like super autistic about that in any ways. But we don't want to change who we are. And something that Cameron put out really well that we have like put into our like company culture, I would say, is like, you are paying us because you want to you want this experience. You are not paying us in order to us to like give you what you want, kind of thing. If you don't like this thing, there's a ton of other events all around the world that you can attend to. But if you do like this is the product. This is what you get, and we are super open about it, like what we expect from the players, and we think that we have gotten a lot of good response to it, like actually having restrictions to that, because like NATO is probably the best example. If you are joining the NATO faction and you're wearing this like I don't know, like Belgian jigsaw pattern, and you're wearing like you have like a Halo space gun kind of thing, that will break the immersion of the game. And this is an experience event, so immersion is a big part of it. So we restrict a ton of guns. We get questions fucking all the time about it. Like, can't I just use this gun instead? Can't I just this? Can I have this pouch instead? And we are always saying no. This is the pattern. This is the rules. If you can't follow them or like attend to it, then there's other events to attend to. It's not that we're being assholes. It's just that we want to cater for the guys that want this type of event, and we want to cater for the guys that enjoys this part. And that, I think, sticks us out from our competitors as far as like the player base, because at least here in Sweden, I don't know how it is in the UK, but in Sweden, it's like mostly come as you please kind of thing. And we will do everything for you to use your special gun that you enjoy so much and your special loadout that you want to wear. But we are not that type of event. And we think that players are adapting to it. Our player base is adapting to it. There's still some, I wouldn't say loopholes, but there are some still things put into the rules where you can wear a different type of NATO pattern, for instance, playing NATO, as long as you are a certain amount of players wearing that same pattern, because we don't want the NATO faction to look like a militia, because it ruins the immersion of it. But we get a ton of questions about it for each event every time. But we think that we are at the upskirts of it, and players are adapting to it, and we think it's for the better.
So do you have so obviously you're quite like strict on the weapons and the loadout and the kit and stuff. What's your stance on like ammo count? Like, do you try to keep it as real as possible, or do you just got
I
as
can
many
take
rounds as you can?
I can take this since Jonathan, well, he's done drinking, but I'm already in mid thought. So this is something that we are looking into changing based on some feedback that we've received, just to see what we could do to make different aspects of our game stand out. So as it stands now, all of the BBs that are used in game, with the exception of maybe like one guy running a sniper and using 4.6s or something like that, all of the BBs are provided to players at no additional cost, thanks to our sponsors that allow us to do that. So we initially issue players BBs after they finish their check-in process, and the amount of BBs that they get is dependent on the weapon platform that they're using. Mm-hmm. So like, just a quick example, riflemen start with 500, LMG starts with 1,500 BBs, and then MMG start with 3,000 BBs. Some feedback that we received, we do have a looting mechanic in our events where a downed enemy player can be looted for like medic water, which is used to revive people back into the game. And then also BBs that are either in speed loaders or in bags or bottles, whatever the case may be. I think we did too good of a job of making people feel the ammo restriction, because almost nobody had any ammo to get looted, because it was all in magazines or they were almost empty. So something that we are toying around with is maybe limiting the amount of ammo that can be put in each magazine. Like for riflemen, for instance, like limiting it anywhere between like 60 to 100 per magazine, you know, something that's reasonable and easy for players to adhere to. We've already talked about, you know, possible abuse of that rule, but again, you know, it kind of comes down to the whole spirit of the game and like why people are there in the first place. It doesn't really make sense to cheat that for a invisible prize, you know?
Yeah, and I think you're touching on a lot of things here that I want to get a little bit deeper into. Like, if we start from the other way around, so like the cheating mechanic to it, like we want to mitigate that. We haven't experienced that in like any way, I would say. Like we had for the last event, we had one guy complaining about hit calling on the other side, but that was one guy in the entire event in one separate occasion, which we think is like a super good thing to it. And we're always gonna have like, so I always want to say that like we're super thankful to our participants. Like they are really they are adapting to the rules. They want to follow the rules. They want to follow the spirit of the game, so to say. So we don't have that issue, but we have to think about like once this expands to a broader audience and everything about what can be abused, what cannot be abused. And I think like we're playing Airsoft, so you can't mitigate everything. If you want to cheat, you can always cheat by just like not taking your hits and everything like that. But I think a good thing about it is that we have staff embedded with each faction in each platoon and everything, so we have something to mitigate that. But the the BB mechanic as like a in-game resource is a crucial part to our events. That becomes like a logistics thing to the events. Like each faction has to solve their logistics problems by making sure everybody has ammunition. And I mean, for the last event, there was a Danish team, and them defending a building against, like, their separate squad defending a building against the entire Rust4 platoon with low count of ammo just made their whole experience. Like, I was there when that took place, and they were just screaming to each other, like, "Do you have ammo? Do you have ammo?" Like, and some guy passed half a magazine to another guy, and that just made their experience so much better in having that to account. So I think like we're mitigating some of that issue by just having BBs restricted. But we got a ton of feedback. It was kind of like a 50-50, but more lenient towards restricting magazines in our BBs in magazines.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking into that, but we haven't decided the total value thing into that. That is something we're discussing, but we're up to testing it, because we are doing this for the player base. We're not doing this by ourselves. So in some ways, there are some things, like, to get back to the point I said before, there are some things that we won't change. That is just part of our identity, but we're open to change some things that we think can be better if we look at player feedback and everything. So we're evolving, but without like destroying our identity thing, if that makes it clear, I think.
Yeah, it seems to be growing in the UK at the moment for events to be more restrictive. Well, I'm saying some events, different events do different things, and ultimately, variety is the spice of life. Sure. But I know we've attended a few events now that are sort of real cap only, so you are limited to whatever your real rifle.
What's your experience about that? Because I've heard a
I
lot
really
of
like
positive feedback.
To be honest with you,
yeah,
massively, because firstly, it slows the game down a little bit. So when you're in combat or contact, sorry, you got rounds flying. It gives you a little bit more chance to make more life or death decisions. I'll put that in inverted commas because obviously it's airsoft, but but when you don't have the ability to just spam the trigger the whole time, each shot that you take matters a little bit more, because you don't want to be laying down 30 rounds and then you end up with 2 left in your mag, and then you've got to do a mag change. Which, when you've got some players running around with like a high kappa pistol that's got like a big box mag on it or something like that, which I appreciate obviously wouldn't fall into the weapon restrictions that you've got for your events, but having that limited mag capacity, I think when you start introducing the fact of, I'm low on ammo, is any more spare mag, and you've got teams that are then looking at platforms with mag compatibility, and you can kind of get that dynamic of actual resource management. We've only got 4 mags left amongst the whole squad. We need to rebomb. That adds another level of immersion for me.
For sure. Yeah.
Last mag from here is make it count.
For sure. And I one thing that it's always been important for me as an organizer too is like having each weapon platform actually fulfill a role. Like there's no reason to use MMG if the LMG are on the same rules. It's just a lighter platform. And the same thing goes from like a LMG to a normal rifle. If they can have unlimited ammo, and you can even have like a box bag into your M4 kind of thing, like why use anything else? So that has always been a big thing for me as an organizer too, like having each weapon platform fulfill a purpose and actually have some kind of benefit to it and some kind of downside to it.
For me, like being like I'm primarily an LMG gunner. It's what I tend to go for when I'm at sim events, and having a limited ammo count actually makes the LMG worth the weight of carrying it around.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got that suppressive fire, but you still need to keep an eye on how much you're using. For me, it makes it so much easier. We've been to a couple of events, haven't we, Mike, where they've limited the ammo count, and they've also said that M4 platforms or like rifles and things can only be used as single shot. as well. So that makes the LMG like a squad in itself, so you can actually use it how it's meant to be used in, say, real steel scenarios and things like that. So for me, I think the more sims that move over to real limits, or I say real, obviously we need to
I know what you mean,
we need to counteract the fact that not all of our rounds are going to shoot where we want them to shoot, like a real rifle. So obviously, like, especially with gas blowback now, mags now, where they are sitting at around 46, 50 rounds, it makes the gameplay a lot more interesting for players, I think.
Yeah. And I think we mitigate some of those things that you're talking about. Like, we create that by just limiting the ammo for each platform. Like, because we feel like players should be able to use full auto, but it should be punishing into doing so. So, like, if you are a rifle gunner and you are in some kind of scenario where you're just laying down flat on the ground, and then a whole squad of the opposing faction is walking by, like, you can use the full auto thing into that engagement, but how much ammo will you have left, kind of thing. So we're mitigating some of those things. The main concern I had from the previous event is like that loot mechanic was kind of like destroyed, because you can't loot from like loot BBs that are inside magazines. So I'm more lenient towards like making that thing work more. But I'm more proponent than Cameron has been, at least, towards restricting BBs inside magazines. So I'm happy to hear that you enjoy it. But it's something that we'll probably try out, and it's something we'll probably try out and then see how it works. If it doesn't work, or our player base doesn't enjoy it, then we'll change it again. It's not the end of the world, kind of thing. But we'll like to try things and see how it works out.
So Sweden, in case people don't know, Sweden's about 1.8 times the size of the UK, and that's like from the top of the islands that we've got down to Cornwall. Do you guys run events across the whole of Sweden, or are you kind of more north or south, or like how does that roll out? And as a follow up, does the weather instigate that as well? So, for example, if are you thinking, I really want to do like a snow-based event, right? We're going to run an event up north, maybe not dead winter, but somewhere around like the start of tail end of winter.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. And as far as like where we've been running events for the first time, so like how Sweden is built up is like from the Stockholm area, which is kind of like mid-south into the south. That's where the majority of the population is located. So as an organizer, you kind of you want to, one thing that I have in mind is like when choosing the venue, it's not like we have everything to choose from the beginning, but if I have the options, or if I'm looking into a new venue, I'm trying to have it located like in between the major cities in order to make it easy for people to travel. I also want to have it close to like a train station or an airport or anything like that to make it easier for international players to attend to. But as far as like the conditions of everything, the weather is pretty much the same. However, it gets colder in the north, obviously, during winter times and everything like that. But you also have to think about the sun conditioning. So we are so far up in the north that if you go into the northern part of Sweden during summer, the sun won't go down, kind of thing, which makes it bad for night play if you want to use night vision and everything, because it's not going to make a difference. It's like the same. The sun is the same as it would be in the evening, kind of thing. As far as like actual like Arctic conditions, doing it in the snow kind of thing, like I as a player would love that shit. Like I would fucking love it. But the majority of the player base wouldn't allow it, and as an or love it, but as an organizer, it scares the shit out of me, kind of thing. Because I've been into the army. My dad was an officer, and he was an Arctic instructor for the Swedish army. So I've been kind of doing that stuff since I was a kid. I know my way around in the Arctic conditions in Sweden. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can die, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as an organizer, that is not something that I want to put the company into, kind of thing.
It adds a new element to the game, though, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Real life
But
state.
yeah,
but like as a
genuinely
player,
die.
I would love it. But as an organizer, I don't know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's
cracking
always that thing
event.
with airsofters.
Cracking
It's
event,
like-
lost an arm due to frostbite.
it's always that thing too, like as an organizer, you always have those people that are Spec Ops Operator 2002, and when they come to the event, you realize like, yeah, they're not gonna do anything, kind of thing. And just having like that kind of setting and people not knowing what they're doing, because it can become an issue even during the summertime. People not knowing how to like handle getting cold, handle getting wet. And if you add on that like -20 Celsius to that, it suddenly becomes dangerous in a whole level, another level, kind of thing. So I would probably love that in the future, but it would probably be like invite only kind of event.
I'd die. I'm just telling you now. Don't invite me. I'd die. I'm useless. I'm useless in English weather.
Yeah, but it would absolutely be manageable for us if we had like 20 people in each squad, like running like a recce kind of event, like recon only kind of event, and having like staff that know what they're doing embedded with everything. Then it would be absolutely possible. But running an event in those conditions with 200 plus players,
no,
that is made for somebody to die, kind of thing.
I think it would be more about just winter survival and not actual gameplay. Like I feel like, especially I see a lot of the Swedish players, they bring the Swedish military tents that have the stoves in the middle. I feel like people would just spend the entire event in there and just be like, we got to get wood. So I don't care where the enemy is. We need to get more wood for the stove. It would be kind of cool. I've thought about that idea of having, you know, if we found land that we could dig in or something like that, building like a trench system where like people could, it would be, again, just like winter survival with like a little taste of airsoft. But I feel like, you know, nowadays in the way that it's currently set up, depending on the group, people already have a difficult time getting up in the middle of the night when they're attacked. So if you add snow into that, they're going to be like, if I die, I die. I'm staying inside this tent. Like, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
And it comes down to that thing too about like being an organizer. You kind of have to think about like the economic part into it. Like, is my time invested into it? Does it give me the enough payback, so to say? So even if I would love to do like an Arctic event and making it manageable by just having like 30 players or something like that, like I could never defend that economically to having like an event with 200 people or 200 plus, as far as like time spent organizing it. Which is kind of a bummer, but it's like the reality of it. Once we get financially and economically independent, I would love to run those events.
I like the way you call it Arctic, and we just go, "Ooh, snow event." You're like, no, full blown -40.
There's a company in the UK called JBG Airsoft who kind of do an awful lot of sort of training scenarios and sort of bits and pieces like that. I think if you ever did get into the realms of running like an Arctic, like survivalist kind of training weekend with a bit of like snow drills and stuff like that, hit them up and make sure you hit us up as well, because I'd definitely be all over that. That'd be wicked.
I'm sure Dan would love that. Hades coming over from from nice
But,
sunny.
but that's the thing too. Like you don't know what the crowd is for that type of event. So I don't know. Like in my mind, who would pay like 200 euros or 170 quid or whatever it might be to like be miserable in the snow for an entire weekend? Yeah, for sure. And like that's just my thought in my head. But then again, it's like when I'm asking myself, I would definitely pay that money to be at that type of event. And maybe there's a crowd for it, and maybe that's worth like trying out for sure. I mean, my dad would probably love that shit, like actually going out and doing that. So yeah, it might be something to try out later on, I think.
I mean, you don't want it so cold that when you fire your gas blowback that the BB just stops about that far away, like, and it just all the silicon freezes. Like,
Or the
obviously
bucking-
that
go
the
ahead.
batteries. Yeah, like how does that? Like you'd have to obviously look into. There's got to be a temperature that things stop working. So like a survival course maybe or training weekend would probably work out better. Mainly because no one could use their weapons.
Yeah,
I have seen some events that are like just below 0 and like the buckings are frozen or whatever, and the BBs are just like dribbling out of the barrel, you know? So again, it would probably just be like, all right, nobody's airsoft gun is working. Now it's just pure focus on winter survival. But I think Jonathan brings up a good point as far as like us focusing in the meantime about what is most commercially viable. Like it's already a niche group like MilSim Airsoft, and then it gets even more niche when we have these types of restrictions. And then, you know, when we're asking people to come out in sub-zero environments, it's, you know, almost microscopic at that point. The juice kind of has to be worth the squeeze for us to devote all that time to planning an event like that.
You'd almost have to have spring bolt action rifles, wouldn't you? Like batteries would die in an AEG. Gas isn't going to work. Like I think probably springs are probably the only fallback there. Springs and knives. That's what you've got.
Yeah, just old school clear spring M4s pulling back the charging handle.
Yeah,
gotcha, bitch.
Yeah.
So you talked about the community there, like how. I guess it's hard to kind of relate to specifically, but kind of, do you have a lot of active kind of MilSim players? Is it kind of, you know, often you're sort of struggling to kind of get a group together per se, or I appreciate there's an awful lot of people in Sweden sort of spread out. So apologies, I don't know kind of how many might be airsofters.
I think it seems, you know, Wesley could correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it seems like they are kind of coming out of the woodworks, and we've heard a lot from these groups that they've been kind of waiting for an event like ours to pop up that's accessible, like for them to be able to attend within a reasonable period of time. So I think like the players that we do have showing up at our events, even the first timers, seem like they are well aware of what we are about. So I don't know if that's derived from experience from past events, or we've also had first-time players that like it was their first time ever playing airsoft at our events, which is interesting because it's like, you know, just immediately off the deep end. Like you would think you would want to test out stuff at like a Sunday play rather than like a 40-hour event being your first airsoft game ever. But yeah, like I think there's the community that is being created around our event is pretty solid. Like people being willing to take in new joiners, and then, you know, just new teams being created again, like around the event and with the intent of rallying people up together to go to a future Nordic MilSim event.
Yeah, and I think the tendency in like Swedish airsoft the past couple of years has been more moving or lenient towards like those score calculating events where they are there to please the customer as an organizer, which means that there are a ton of events that doesn't really have regulations on anything. So the scene has kind of like adapted to that, wearing like super high speed plate carrier or chest rigs and boonie hats and whatnot, just making their kits so light as possible, because there's no
meta build.
benefit. Yeah, that's the meta build to it. But with and previously it was more of like an impression scene. Like the impression scene in Sweden was like really big, like 7-8+ years ago, but it has died off because no organizer has like put that type of event to the market, kind of thing. And when we put out our events, we feel like the MilSim category of players that actually run like impression kits and everything, they have like crawled out of their deeps, kind of thing, and actually started playing Airsoft again, and doing it like super, super nicely. We feel like our community has been growing and is steadily being kind of strong. I think our Discord is like super vibrant, and people are running up, and just as Cameron said, like people are actually getting connected to each other, making like teams for events and actually getting into teams with each other, because they think that our events is like actually making them have something like to strive for and whatnot. So it's blowing up that community, because like it's not been offered for the past couple of years. And we also see, like, we think that, at least I think that the reason why we have such a large number of international players coming to our events, it's just because like those events are not offered in Europe in that capacity, and they want to experience that kind of thing. And getting back to that point about like how Cameron said that we have had players that actually like play Airsoft for the first time at our events, those players have actually exceeded all expectations. I have one player in mind that that asked us all the right questions, that wanted to get prepared, that did everything beyond to get prepared for the event, and they excelled during the event. And I think a lot of that has to do because they had no prior experience, kind of thing. So they were open-minded to it. They just swallowed all the information we have on our website, all the information that we gave them, and above all the information that our current player base gave them, because people are super nice, giving out the information, getting other players prepared for everything. So we're so super thankful for our community making that work. And it's absolutely possible to have this to be your first Airsoft event, as long as you have the right mindset and you asking the right questions, kind of thing. So yeah, we think it's we're moving into the right direction, and we feel like we're getting the right player response, making us like confident that this is the right way to move forward.
So I want to kind of just follow up on that quickly, because I appreciate we want to talk about the events and stuff as well. But so from my understanding, obviously, Sweden is sandwiched between Norway and Finland. Norway has military service. Finland's got military.
You've
but I think you've got sort of something a little bit. Oh, have I muted?
No,
you're back. But
no.
You cut out
cool.
like mid.
So you got. No, that's fine. So Norway's obviously got kind of like military service. Finland's got military service. I don't think Sweden does per se. But do you find that you've got people with an interest within your player base because of that, out of interest?
The brief history lesson is that we had mandatory like military service or conscript period or whatnot until 2009, I was the last generation that did mandatory service. But even then, it was like a big cut down to it. They just put it back into the system. So now we have mandatory service again since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So it's coming back. But I definitely think that has some play into it. Like, people want that kind of experience and they haven't experienced it before. But I also feel like players like myself that has done the conscript period here in Sweden or the military service, they are still interested, because it's like it's not the same thing. Like, even though I have military experience, it's not the same thing. We want to get as close as possible to reality. But even if it's like super, super authentic and close to reality, it's not the same thing, because you're playing a game and you're enjoying yourself. You have actually paid money to enjoy this. It's not like some fucking drill sergeant waking you up midnight and having you do push-ups and everything like that. It's not the
Get
same
up,
thing.
bitch, you have Firewatch.
Yeah. Like there's definitely some aspects that are integrated to that, like lack of sleep, taking orders, doing like firefights in the correct way and everything like that. But the whole mindset to it is like you're there to enjoy yourself, kind of thing. And one thing that I and Cameron talk a lot about is like, this is type 2 fun. So you're probably not enjoying yourself whilst doing it, but you're creating memories for life later on. But I definitely think that has some part to it, but I wouldn't say it's like a definite thing, if you know what I mean.
There's no necessarily like direct correlation, like it's a good mixture of both.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Sweden, it's kind of weird because they do have the mandatory service, and like without the period where there was no mandatory service, but it's one of those things where it is common enough to where people never talk about it, even though they all have that in common. So there are cases where I'm meeting people that are return customers and have been to several of our events, and I don't find out that they had anything to do with the military until much longer down the line. So I think it's just more so the people that are attracted to our events are the people that want the scenario that we offer with like the aspects of our game that we offer. It's not necessarily like because they either did or didn't have military service sort of thing.
No, that's fair.
The one question that I was this is changing the subjects a little bit. What's your like FPS and dual limits over there for if people did want to come over? Because obviously every country's ever so slightly different. So, and for me, it's a really nerdy fact that I like to collect.
We are just smiling because it's been a big thing. When we announced our dual limits, half of the Swedish Airsoft crowd loved it. Half of the crowd fucking hated it. And there was so many feelings going on. I've never seen a post that we made that had so many comments to it. But to get into it, like the normal Swedish like dual limit thing that most of the organizers use, it's 1.2 joules for CQB, so 0 meter engagement distance, and then 1.7, it's 10 meters. 2.1 is the LMG or MMG class, which is 20 meters. 2.4 is the DMR, and then 3 or 4 joules is the sniper, so 30 and 40 meters. We changed that for our MilSim events. So we run 1.5 joules as our 0 meter engagement distance, but it's also a class that is correlated to your weapon system. So if you are a LMG gunner or a rifle man, you need to be at 1.5 joules or less. If you are an MMG gunner, you get a 20 meter or 15 meter engagement distance and it has to be at 2.1 joules or less. And the DMR is 2.4, so it's the same, and that's 20 meters, so 2.4 or less. And then we limit the weapon systems that you can use within your squad, kind of thing. So we limit the amount of players that can use LMGs or MMGs and DMRs and whatnot. So the big thing is the 1.5 joule limit for CQB. So you could, at our events, run a LMG, go into a building and full auto it at 0 meters in 1.5 joules.
Just a addition to that, we also, at least for the interim, it is subject to change in the future, because the Swedish scene, according to their like 2020 joule table, if you are using like a rifle type weapon, you could either be 1.2 and be 0 meter, or 1.7 and down to, you know, like just over 1.2 would be considered a 10 meter engagement. So we still offer that for rifles and for LMGs, just for it's kind of like it's
a
blended
bridge right
system.
now.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that will be taken off.
What
Like,
we also
remove
do
that.
is we enforce the carrying of a sidearm if you do not have a weapon that is, or, you know, replica that is considered to be 0 meters. So if you have to have a sidearm then that is 0 meters, and a big reason that we want this to be the case is because I've noticed just at regular Sunday games and like even other events that are, you know, consider themselves to be MilSim, I find that it really breaks up a game when you have a stack of people outside of a building, for example, and everybody's arguing or talking amongst them, and they're like, who's 0 meters? Who's 0 meters? I'm not. Okay, well, that means we can't go in the building. Like, it's just it's just garbage, you know. Then you have to like hunt down some players on your team that do have the 0 meters or whatever. And I find that the 1.5, as we use in the United States, is a good in between the 1.2 and 1.7, to where it's conducive to both close range and, you know, medium range engagements in the forest. Like, you're still able to reach out and touch people with it. And then there's, you know, if you're running a 1.5 joule platform, then you don't have to worry about going over a trench or a berm or something, and then somebody's there and you're like, oh, do we do a parlay? Or, like, you know, the game kind of stops until we figure this out.
And
but I think
there's no such, like, the biggest airsofty thing too is like switching to your sidearm when you enter a building. Like,
it's nobody
in the real world would fucking do that.
I don't want to hurt him too bad. Let me pull out my sidearm. But yeah, and I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Thanks, Jonathan.
No, but 1.5 is our CQB limit, and we feel like it works super good, because it's like Cameron said, it's like the in between the classes. Like, you can get up and touch people at the distance in the woods, but you don't have to think about switching to a sidearm or anything like that. And also, like, getting back to that thing about weapon classes actually fulfilling a purpose, like it makes a difference between carrying 240 Bravo and 249. It has a difference to it, not only like the ammunition to it, but it actually, like the BB issued BB restrictions, but it also has the MMG can actually go further to it. And it's easier for us as organizers, and it's easier for players to distinguish like what is your actual cap on your gun,
And
what
what's
is
your
your
role?
minimum
Yeah.
engagement distance kind of thing.
I think with the engagement distance too, like a big thing that, you know, people are worried about is when you visualize, you know, 0 meter, people take it like quite literally as if like somebody has the barrel of a replica in their mouth and then they're pulling the trigger. Like, how would that feel? But it's more about like I don't know if we had any complaints at
Nothing.
our previous event. It's just like, it's a matter of statistically, like at events, how often does that actually happen? And I feel like most people have the common sense to not maliciously do something to cause somebody harm. And even then, you know, if you're afraid of getting shot in the face at close range, it's up to the individual player to take those appropriate steps to mitigate risk to themselves, like wearing face protection or a mouth guard or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, or choosing another event or playing ping pong. Like,
Yep.
you can do something else if you don't want to get shot. Like, yeah.
Oh, hang on.
Playing ping pong.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with that, like, do you limit the weights for platforms, or is it like, so for me, in my MWS I run 4s, and in my LMGs I run like 0.3s, 0.32s.
Yeah.
Do you say that, like, because obviously you've got like 0 distances and things like that, do you kind of suggest what weights people go up to for their weapon platform, or
So the players that can choose their BB weight are the recon unit guys that play a sniper. So we limit the sniper platform, so 2 guys per faction. So there's only 2 guys in the entire faction that can actually wield a sniper rifle, and they are allowed to bring their own BBs.
Mhm.
The DMRs can also bring their own BBs. We restrict it to that it has to be biodegradable BBs, so it's like 4.6s, I think, that is the max weight for biodegradable. But other than that, you are not allowed to bring your own ammunition. You are resupplied by us, and that is to have it like an in-game resource and to the logistics systems and everything. So all the BBs are provided by us. Like last event, we brought 420,000 BBs to the player base, and those are 3.2s, and that is what you're gonna get, kind of thing.
Nice.
So every players, with the exception of the DMRs that can bring their own BBs and the sniper players that can bring their own BBs, are all 3.2s.
We encourage people not to unless it's absolutely necessary, because even if you are bringing your own ammunition, it's not like a workaround to the logistics system or like getting resupply. So those BBs that you bring, you know, you mark them however you want, and then they are still controlled by staff. So when players get resupply, you get your resupply at that time as well. You're not carrying all of your own ammunition. And, you know, the reason we don't want regular riflemen and things like that bringing their own BB weight is because it is controlled by staff. If people are just excessively bringing like 2.8s, 2.5s, like whatever their preference is, that's more stuff that we have to keep track of. And then at the end of the day too, like most people have their own preference, but I find that like 3.2s are pretty universal. And even like events that I've gone to that also issue ammunition like that in the US, you come up with the issue if the BBs are in-game resources and they're all lootable, you know, by the final day, you have magazines that have 2.5s, 2.8s, and 3.2s in like the same magazine. So when you're shooting, you know, they're going all over the place. And this kind of just helps to like standardizing the BB weight just kind of helps to mitigate some of that. And then also, if you're a player using the supplied ammunition, you don't want to be going and checking down players for ammo, and like every other guy is saying, these are my own BBs, they're not lootable, and you know, then you're just like, okay, the immersion is gone, this is whack, sort of thing.
I like that. I think that's a cool idea.
It's
We've had a
it's
few-
working really nice too. Like it's a big thing to our events. Not only like how it affects the event, about like how I told the story before about the previous event about people being low on ammunition, but also like having the loot mechanic and not worrying about BBs. That's also like a big thing to it.
One less thing for you to forget when you're
Yeah.
attending an event. You
Yeah.
know, now you just got to worry about bringing your boots and your sleeping bag.
I feel if you're forgetting BBs, then you're fundamentally going to run the risk of forgetting something else.
Well,
I've
no,
seen-
hang on.
yeah, I've seen it all.
We've had someone forget their trousers before.
Yeah,
So-
true.
I've seen vest, I've seen boots, I've seen gun. Just an example that I have off the top of my head was one of my friends. It was like right when I got back into the MilSim stuff in 2020, I think it was. He forgot boots. Luckily, you know, it's the United States and there's a surplus store around every corner. So he went and got some like Vietnam era surplus boots for $20. His feet were destroyed by the end of that event, like blisters out the wazoo.
You say that.
Um,
There's not everyone on every corner. If you go to Colorado,
That's
There's-
fair.
there's none. It took me 2 weeks to find one.
I often live like when I was in the US, like around, you know, close proximity to military bases. So it's probably something to do with that. You know, if there's an Air Force base or whatever, you can find anything in there for things that you forget.
We've had a few questions come in. Now, Cameron, this one's going to be a bit weird, and I'll explain this one afterwards. But Pegasus asks, Cameron, this may sound cryptic, so I apologise, but what would you call an object that holds water or fluids for hydration when you're on a MilSim?
Okay, it does.
What do you
sound
drink from?
cryptic.
What do you drink from when you're on a MilSim?
A canteen.
Fine, thank you. Perfect.
Was it is it a British
No.
terminology thing?
No, so right, canteen is an American terminology, as is
okay,
recon.
Damn.
Right, as I said earlier, my dad being American, I grew up watching a lot of sort of American war movies, and my dad obviously referring to it as like recon and canteen and stuff like that. And I constantly get the piss taken out of me because of that. And I've made notes that both you and Johan have been saying throughout. Oh, sorry, Jonathan. Sorry, throughout the show. I've been saying like recon and stuff like that, and I was hoping that you were going to say canteen as well because it just proves a point. It's good. Thank you.
What do they call it in the UK?
A water bottle, apparently.
It's just a water
Yeah.
bottle. It's a
But then
bottle that holds
this is a
water.
water bottle. You know, there's no way to separate.
That's
the
what I
two.
keep saying.
I thought you were going to say something like a flask or, you know, something like that, but a water bottle. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Military
that's perfect.
terminology, you know.
No, don't worry about it. That's perfect. That answers the point. Drew asks, what's the size of a play zone? So when you've got your events, etc., what kind of size of kind of playable area do you have?
Wesley can elaborate on this if he feels I didn't do a good enough job explaining it. But I think it just varies from venue to venue. Ideally, you know, we don't host events at areas that we feel like is not going to be conducive for the amount of players that we have. So we don't ever compromise just for the sake of selling more tickets sort of thing. But we are, so, you know, when we rent a venue, we mark out all of the areas that are in play, which, you know, ideally it's going to be, you know, let's just say there's a boundary. It would be everything that's in there. But of course, you know, because we have this enforced command structure and things like that, those your command structure is what is ushering you around to different areas in the play zone. There we discourage and also punish people that just go do Ricky Recon, lone wolf type stuff, and then you never see them for the entire game. They're going to miss out on ammo resupply and all that other stuff because we're probably going to, when we know they've gone AWOL, we will probably strategically do it around times where they're absent so that they have no choice but to return. But yeah, for like in Sweden, it's kind of weird. Some venues, they will have like a summer house in the middle of the venue, which really irks me because I will find like a perfect venue and then there's like a summer house in the middle. And I hate having to, then we have to go out, put up caution tape and be like, don't use this as cover. You're going to shoot their windows out. But as far as like the actual size, I think for the size that we are currently at and what we are expecting to be in the near term, I think I'm still like trying to wrap my head around the metric system.
It's probably like 5 by 5
10
kilometers
square. Yeah,
5 by 5. Yeah,
I don't work in hectares either.
No, but so when we're looking about for new venues, it's kind of like it's kind of dependent of what the venue offers. If it's like a venue that offers like a city structure and everything, then it might encourage us to actually like say, okay, even though we think it's smaller than we think, but we'll never move past 3 by 3 kilometers. The gold standard is probably 5 by 5 or larger. But it's like Cameron said, it's dependent on the attendees that we expect. We're not going to have like a 10 by 10 and then have 100 players show up. But we'll the venues we're looking into right now is like 5 by 5 or 5 by 10 or 10 by 10 kilometers.
I mean, that already blows a lot of airsoft sites in the UK.
Yeah,
well out of the water. Like,
I mean, you're talking miles at this point, and we're still meters at some events. Yeah. So with that, do you actively encourage people to bring military vehicles? Do you hire vehicles at all for getting around?
So we're talking that through currently. So we have different units so when you choose your faction, you can also choose a unit to sign up for. So we have the infantry platoon, we have the recon element, which is a really small element. I'm using recon again, apologize. And
okay, mate, it's a safe space here to use that word. It's absolutely fine.
We have HQ, and then we have the QRF/logistics team. We are looking into like limiting vehicles to just like QRF and logistics, but we haven't made a final decision to it yet. Vehicles are absolutely approved to the events if we feel them deem at the event. They come with restrictions, as all of our stuff comes down to. As far as like how it needs to look like, what type of vehicle it is, what kind of like hit calling rules that come onto that type of vehicle and everything. But I wouldn't say like vehicles is a large part of our events. I'm really hesitant, but because I don't want to go too deep into it. I don't want to say something that I can't put out to the players later on. But we're really looking into that vehicle thing for later events. We're talking to a lot of people that actually have like awesome, fucking cool, YouTube friendly everything vehicles to it. And we'd love to have that come on to our events, but it comes down to this safety thing to it too. Like Cameron is a huge proponent to safety as far as vehicles. Where in Sweden, vehicles has been kind of like out of bounds in rules. Like people are driving them like crazy. I've actually seen a guy like almost get driven over by a tank at an event, like a real tank.
Yeah.
So that is something that we really have in consideration when we're applying vehicles to the event. But you're always free to ask. Like if you have any questions or if you want to bring a vehicle, you can always ask. And the worst thing that you can get is a no. But we'll always try to make it work. But we're not going to tell anybody that they can bring a vehicle and there aren't any sufficient ways to like actually have it live into the game with like road networks and whatnot. So we want to make sure that their experience by bringing a vehicle is actually a good one too, and that depends on the venues. So
it is really like Dukes of Hazzard with vehicles here out in Sweden. Like it is Mad Max hanging off the side of trucks when people are driving like 40 plus kilometers. It's crazy. But just to touch on the vehicle stuff really quick, the most common things you typically see at events are like what I would consider like soft skin vehicles, like pickup trucks or military type vans. Like for our events, the primary roles those are serving are logistics and like QRF transport purposes. Another big thing at our events, we don't do squad vehicles where like one squad brings a car and now that is their excuse to not have to hike at all during the event. If you're bringing a vehicle, you're in some way, shape, or form going to be attached to headquarters, and it's going to be a faction asset. And it's going to be utilized in the role that it should be used in. We don't do golf cart hillbilly tanks. It needs to be, even if it's like a Toyota Hilux or a regular pickup, it's still viable for the event, but it's not going to be a tank because your windows are rolled up sort of thing. So yeah, like if somebody brings an IFV, it's going to be a IFV. Like if it's a hard skin vehicle, we will make sure it fits in the event and is utilized accordingly. We're not going to be, if you're getting, 1 kilometer per liter or whatever the case. I was going to say gallon, but I don't know how far over people's heads that was going to go. What the fuck is a gallon? But,
2 barrels, isn't it, in the US?
Yeah.
So if you're bringing a tracked vehicle, like that, we're not going to be having you do logistics runs throughout the duration of the event and just burning your bank account. So yeah, like we want to use vehicles in a realistic capacity.
But at the same time, it's like you can't bring a vehicle and then expect to use it like for free at your own accord kind of thing. Like if you bring a vehicle, it's a faction asset, and if HQ wants you to drive a QRF force to one location, that is what you need to do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, no, it is your car, but you're not going to be like dedicated SEAL Team 6 insertion transport the entire event, like at your own will.
So if we came over with a Chinook, which we have been, we need an event that we can land a Chinook in. We can't.
We'd have to look at our insurance.
We haven't yet. So we've approximately worked out the costs that, because you can fit about 40 players in a Chinook. We've worked this out, and you can hire a Chinook. So I haven't found a specific website yet, but apparently it works out to be about £150.
Do you have a pilot?
Did you? Well, no, it comes with a pilot. Apparently it works out to be about £150 per player to get a Chinook to an event. And I was like, no,
wow.
We think this is viable. I think we think that a lot of people would pay for that.
It does sound really cool, but then it's one of those things where I'm like, it sounds really cool, but do I want to end up in a Airsoft related news headline about
just to do a bit of comparison, we talked about 5 by 5 kilometers. So obviously that works out as 25 square kilometers. The largest airsoft site in the UK, according to Google, is Section 8 Airsoft up in Scotland, which is 1,400 acres, which is, after having searched that, about 5.7 square kilometers. So we're talking, the largest one in the UK is 5.7, whereas Cameron and Jonathan. Is it Jonathan? Jonathan? Because it's a soft J.
You could say Jonathan, but that's like the English way to say it, not the Swedish way.
That's right. I called him Johan earlier anyway. So
yeah, well, it's okay. There's a shit ton of Johans here, so.
So yeah, what they're talking about, we're talking about the comparison between the UK being the largest, 5.7, going up to 25 square kilometers. So it's quite a substantial uplift on what we're used to. There's another question that came in from Pegasus. Do you find radio tricky to maintain with the size of the AO?
That's a good question. So we have a kind of a dedicated radio guy in our staff who also kind of works on his own side projects with a different event series. But he brings out batteries, antennas, and, you know, all the equipment to operate radios from like a command post. I personally did not find that there was any, unusual radio issues. I mean, it seems like at every MilSim type event, there's always issues when people are running bow fangs or like whatever the case is. I mean, the radios that we're using commercially are, you know, very rarely are they going to be of the same quality of things that are like military grade. So I think, you know, for us, we have a heavy emphasis on the importance of maintaining communication, and when you are experiencing issues, mitigating those or resolving those as quickly as possible. So that could be something as easy as, if your radio goes down, take a guys in your squad who doesn't necessarily have to have a radio for his role. Or even then, you know, if the only option is a team leader, it's more important that the squad leader has a working radio than the team leader, just because they have to be able to communicate with the platoon headquarters and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, it just seems like radio issues are inevitable. But we do have other means of communication. If cell reception is a thing, a lot of people often use Telegram to chat. I haven't really decided on a specific medium. Like for us at the staff level, we're using a mixture of Telegram or like Facebook Messenger, depending on what the venue is and like what everybody prefers using. However, in the future, near future, we're going to be investing into like dedicated staff radios so that we have at least one line of communication that, you know, will most likely not go down throughout the duration of the event. But, you know, that's a pretty heavy investment to like invest in, you know, 8+ radios that are just for events, you know, high quality radios. We're talking probably like 400 euros plus per unit. So, yeah.
No, that's fair. Probably appreciate we're running through a few sort of quick fire questions for you.
No worries.
Drew asks, what's your kind of total number of players at events?
Every single event, it seems to be increasing. At the one we did in August, we had, I think, 50 total. We had one event in between, and then this event we did in April, it was 130. So I would say, you know, it's a safe bet that it's going to be over 100 from here on out, but we're not having issues selling tickets. But again, it's like just a matter of prioritizing the experience and making sure, you know, our focus is not on selling tickets, but about maintaining the quality of the product that we're giving to our customers. So I think our goal for the next event is going to be 200 or more, and that is what we are planning on with our staff expansion and training and all that, and venue acquisition.
Nice. Drew says, did you mention that you could do cross-border gameplay? So is this a real border crossing or just purely gameplay, like false boarding?
If I understand the question correctly, it is he's talking about boundaries of countries, right?
Yeah.
It's purely fictional. I mean, the events that we're hosting are for the time being, although we do have plans and connections in other European countries that we would like to host our event in. For the time being, they are all held in Sweden.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I guess there aren't a number of situations where if you just have a fence running through a forest, you can go, right, that's the border. So,
and plus for the sake of like, just we're not going to be violating, like laws for the sake of immersion.
It's an actual invasion.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. It's a side objective is don't get caught by the Norwegian Border Patrol.
Oh, Drew says, cancel the border question. I was geographically embarrassed.
Too late. You should have led with that one.
And then Drew also asks, is it easy transport connections to play areas? So, I mean, we obviously talked about sort of games being sort of between cities, but
yeah,
is it? Are we talking like a half-hour drive for people, a couple hours?
It really depends on the venue and where it is located. I know, like it seems like most of the complaints of traveling were largely based within the Swedish player base because they're not hopping on flights or like planning flights around getting to as close to the event as possible. Like we had somebody came from Canada and they flew into Gothenburg and only had like a 30-minute drive. And then on the other hand, we had players from northern Sweden that had to drive, 12 plus hours to be there. So all I can really say is when we host an event or when we announce an event with the venue, we try to include transportation options for our international customers as far as what might be the easiest way for them to get to the event. But we aren't picking venues purely based off of the ease of getting to the venue, unless we know, it's in a super remote area and it's going to be nearly, it's going to be much more difficult for people to attend. So yeah.
That's cool.
I've just
to
had a
follow
look.
up.
It's only £100 to fly from the UK to Sweden.
Yeah, no, it's very like within Europe, it's very inexpensive. Not compared to, US or Canada, where it's like €600 to €800 for a round trip, depending on the time of year.
It's not even that anymore.
Oh my gosh.
It's dropped down.
Good thing I'm here. Hopefully I don't need to go back anytime soon.
Pegasus asks, follow up to the radio question. Have you messed around with ATAC and mesh networks?
I would, if he was present, I would defer the mesh network question to the guy that I mentioned that works on the radio stuff for us. We kind of just depend on him to show up and set it up. So, for future events, obviously, if he wasn't going to be present, that would be a responsibility that myself, Jonathan, or one of our other staff members would take on. We currently use Aries Alpha, and I hate it. And for the next event, we are probably going to be using ATAC. But when it comes to Aries Alpha, like that is something that we use for our Sunday games. But for some reason, it's just been a big issue for this particular format. So it might, I'm sure our local players will complain about it as far as like having to use two separate apps for both of our games, our MilSim games and our like Sunday play games. But I do prefer ATAC for longer games, and I think it just helps with the whole command and control process.
That's cool.
Yeah, I like
that. I had a question and it's completely popped out of my head now. Right, that was it. So you wanted to talk about you're kind of diving into a more insurgency based event. Sort of tell us more about that.
I'm upset at Jonathan for even mentioning that.
Okay.
It's on the website, to be fair, but it is so far back in my mind, is in like the list of priorities for us, developing the brand and the games as a whole. We were going to do a trial insurgency event, but then we both kind of just decided that we should just focus on the force on force format. Since, this is only our second, true event using that format. And like I said, the last one was really good. A lot of not changes, but improvements were made from the October event to the April event. And it was almost like night and day. We got really, really positive feedback on that. So I just like to focus on that and expand. But I can touch on the insurgency stuff a little bit. So the idea is it's kind of like life in a conflict area simulator. So there's a little bit more role play mechanics. There would be like a local police force wherever the game is, pretend or like where it's supposed to take place. So whether it is Russia or some other, more obscure country, that is kind of what like the local police force would be based off of. And then you would also have your two primary factions being NATO and RUSFOR. The role that they're playing would kind of be dependent on the scenario, whether one faction is a peacekeeping force, or maybe they're both peacekeeping forces, or maybe only one is a peacekeeping force and the other is trying to undermine what they are doing for the local populace, sort of thing. And then you're also going to have your civilian players that are, from my experience of these types of formats, or this particular format, the sky is kind of the limit. It's a little, I feel like it's going to be kind of challenging to implement, just because a lot of the player base that I've grown accustomed to in Europe aren't super familiar with how playing as a civilian is supposed to work. It's kind of easier when you have like a more experienced player base like you do in the US with these particular formats. But yeah, the sky is kind of the limit with the civilians. Like they can get a job, they can sell oranges out of a wagon if they wanted to. They can like do sell actual items, like bring in their little surplus airsoft stuff if they want to set up like a pretend weapon shop or whatever the case is. Yeah. So I don't like to spell out in black and white what civilians are supposed to be doing. It's more of like, what do you want to do? And then we're planning on putting out forms for like a business application, so you can kind of tell us briefly what it is, what you're going to be doing. It doesn't even have to be a real service, it could be a pretend service where you're there as a construction company repairing like a destroyed building that's already on site. It's like, it's really like what you and your friends want to do. Or you could just show up as a roamer and see what everybody else is doing, or you can pre-coordinate with whoever is going to be leading the police so that you can get the stuff required for a police force. But there's a lot that goes into that, and I feel like I'm going to have to like spell it out a lot more clearly before we decide to move into that. I feel like a good trial would be getting our experienced player base to pilot that event and then document it, and kind of take notes on what happens throughout the event, so that we can more easily identify things that need more clarification and things of that nature.
Me and Mike are very good at doing civ pop.
One
of my best events was when me and Pegasus walked around for a whole 24 hours as asbestos removal.
No, exactly.
Didn't have a weapon on us at all, until we were literally we were just wandering around with a wheelie bin, and it got to the point where the players actually didn't know if we were like properly removing asbestos at this point.
Yeah.
But that was good fun.
I've seen am I allowed to name drop other events, or you prefer if I don't?
No, you can do so. Yeah.
So I was at a insurgency event hosted by MilSim West, and there
you can't name drop them.
So there was a guy who disguised himself as a homeless person, like with the fake beard and everything, but we didn't encounter him until nighttime. And that area is where we were playing in California. They're like the town that it's in, I guess, kind of has like a drug problem. And like the area that we were playing in it used to be military housing. All of the copper has been stripped. So, it wouldn't be far-fetched to see like an actual like vagrant or what they refer to as a desert wizard roaming that area. But I saw him and I like didn't really think anything of it. And then I started thinking like, this guy seems off. Like, I think this might actually be somebody that is here that shouldn't be. And I didn't realize it was a player until I went back over to him and shined a light and saw he was wearing eye protection. Then I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
But it was super convincing. And I had no idea. It was a member of the staff. And I had no idea it was a staff member until like after the event. I guess he was supposed to be like a president in exile. And he was like using that disguise to infiltrate the civilian populace. But it was great.
Nice. We've probably come to the end of the show. Unfortunately, Jonathan's had to quickly dive off with childcare issues. But if you want to get in touch with Cameron or Jonathan about Nordic MilSim, I've tagged their Instagram under their names there. So it's at Nordic MilSim. You can also jump on their website, which is, if I can't find it quick enough now, www.nordicmilsim.com. Oh, you even got the little scrolly banner there. Lucky you. So you can jump on there. You can find out more about them. If I highly recommend you do, because I won't lie, I was a little bit envious of your website. It is very well organized, and there's a whole lot of stuff on there, which even as a MilSim player in the UK or sort of anywhere else, if you can't attend the Nordic MilSim events for whatever reason, there's stuff on there that you will probably find useful. So I recommend that people jump on there and have a little look. There we go. Coming back. In the meantime, we will be back next week. You can get in touch with us in advance of our show on our email of nofochat@hotmail.com. Our Instagram is at November_Foxtrot_NoFo, and the website is novemberfoxtrot.co.uk. We'll be doing a Q&A next week, so it'll be a variety of questions and various kind of topics of discussion. So if you want to get involved, you can send your questions in advance. Gents, we normally have closing words, which are either words of wisdom or, a little sentiment that people like to share. It just depends on how you're feeling on the moment. I'm going to invite both of you to provide some closing words for us, if you wouldn't mind.
That's fine.
I just want to close off by saying thank you for having us. Appreciate it a lot. Airsoft is just a game. Enjoy yourself.
I also want to say thank you for having us. I don't know if it would be classified as words of wisdom, but something that I like to live by to improve myself is a leadership principle: know yourself and seek self-improvement.
Nice.
I think that's the best one we've had.
Yeah. We've had some truly terrible ones. I promise you they were pretty good.
Mainly from me.
Yeah. No, guys, thank you ever so much for joining us on the show. And it's been a real privilege to find out more about yourselves and Nordic MilSim. So,
stop
that's
moving
pretty
your
much
head.
it from us.
Going.
Oh, I will keep my head dead still. That's
still.
all from us. I don't know if you heard me say thank you to Jonathan and Cameron for joining us and telling us about Nordic MilSim. But yeah, it's been genuinely a real pleasure. And it was weird how quickly it came together as well, because it's only really kind of come together in the last week. So I'm really glad that we were able to get this sorted out, because it's been good. It's been good. Join us on the show next week, Wednesday, 8:00. Say goodbye, guys.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care. Bye.
Stay NoFo. Ciao, Bella.
We'll see you later. Have a good one.
See you later. Mike, I want my admin privileges back.
Tack för att du tittade på November Foxtrot. I hope that was right.